Good day, everyone. This is John Scarborough. It's a little bit windy. I'll try to speak up. Make sure you can hear me in the microphone. You can hear the cows. They're ready to move. They're out there on that pond. We are getting ready to I think what we're going to talk about today mostly is the introduction of mob grazing, or starting to mob graze full time. Not sure what it will be, what I'll title it. But anyway, we're finally going to start making sure that we're starting out mob grazing. And I kind of wanted to just go over how we plan to do it. I was actually just at a Greg Judy conference there in Texarkana. Really enjoyed that, learned a lot. And I noticed by talking to a lot of people there that they seem to be under they seem to be under the impression that they either need to be 100% like Greg Judy, or they need to be, or it doesn't work. You know, so it's like some of them, you would hear some people, when you were talking to them, it's like there was no choice in the matter, completely 100% exactly what he's doing right now. And then like starting off that way. And then there would be the other people that would just be like, nope, not going to do it. It doesn't work. Greg Judy's methods doesn't work. And I actually am a big proponent of Greg Judy and the way he does things. And I think his method works fabulous for him. I mean, you can tell it works, but it doesn't just work for him. There's quite a few other people that it works for. And so I think Greg Judy would agree with me. I think the big difference is that the difference in, you know, a lot of people will try to get started on it, and they think to themselves that it has to be 100% exactly the way Greg Judy is doing it on his farm in his area. And I think if you really look at what Greg Judy is doing, he is adopting a method that works for his environment, and he's trying to stay as close to nature, work with nature as much as possible. And so if you'll think of it that way, instead of thinking I'm trying to do what Greg Judy does, instead think I'm going to use Greg Judy as a teacher, and I'm going to try to do what he does and adapt to nature, like try to run things according to nature in my area. And so I think that's where a lot of people, they run into problems with that, is they'll try to do exactly what Greg Judy does, and it doesn't work because they may be in a different area. Like I had a pretty good conversation with Greg when I was up there, and we were talking about how, you know, how our areas are significantly different, and there's a lot of differences in our area. But that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of ways that we can adapt and do those things. There's just tweaking involved. So for me, what I try to do is I do what Greg Judy does to start with, okay? And then I just tweak from there to try to figure out how to make his method work in my situation and in my area. But then the other thing is you also have to figure out how to make what he does work for you specifically as a person and for your farm specifically. Like Greg Judy, he's a very big operation. I guarantee you, or at least I don't think that he started out doing every single thing he's doing all at one time. I mean, he slowly, you know, started adapting and doing more and more things as he went. And for him, a lot of that is just because he didn't have a whole lot of people. He was kind of pioneering it. I mean, he did have, you know, he did have people to help him, you know, and he had a couple different articles, and he had different, he had a really good guy he talked to from South Africa, and, you know, and so he did have help. But for us, we have a lot more available than he did. So he adapted slower, and he took on that slower. So, but what we need to realize is that we can still take that on slow. Just because we have all that knowledge at our disposal doesn't mean we need to overwhelm ourselves. We need to take our time and get into it. So anyway, that was something I've seen a lot of different people, is they tried to get into it really, really fast, and either they tried to do all of it at one time, You know, and then a lot of those same people would start off being the kind of person that would try to do every single thing 100%, and then later they'd end up being the person that would be sitting there talking in the background saying, nope, that doesn't work, this doesn't work, it just doesn't work, you know. And that's not helpful to anybody, you know. Just learn how to adapt and make it work on your farm. And so I'm gonna kind of go over what my plan is to start mob grazing. My goal has always been to get to 1-day moves. Now, I've been very fortunate on quite a few of my places. They've been cross fenced, so there's multiple different pastures, and to where I can usually move my cattle, even just using the cross fences that are there, I can usually move them once a week, and in some cases once every 3 days. I've gotten it down to and I have done intensive mob grazing. I can go back and watch some of that stuff I've done. And right now I use it as a tool. I go to bad areas and I use it as a tool specifically. And I don't do much more than that. But I have gotten them down to where I move them every 3 days. And that was the best that my grazing experience has ever been. All of my cows performed better. It wasn't a huge difference. You could just tell there was a slight performance better. There was slight difference in the performance, definite difference in the performance of the steers, but the mamas and all like that, they did quite well as well. And then there was a lot better performance as far as you saw. There were less cows with tails, you know, you could less cows that you could tell had any worms or anything, and it was just quite a bit better. So my goal has always been to get to 1-day moves, because I really do think if I can move once a day, that's going to be huge for me. That's been an obstacle for me. I'm not going to lie about that. And I'm not knocking Greg Judy or Joe Salton or anyone who does this at all, because if it's been an obstacle for me, I mean, I know for a fact it was an obstacle for them, and it's just something I haven't overcome yet. I'm not going to even for a minute say that I can't overcome it or that I'm giving up. I'm not. Most likely it just means that I have not gotten my system figured out. But one thing, I won't go back just a little bit, one thing that I do have to keep in mind, and I think a lot of people need to keep in mind, is I am just one person. For me, I mean, I got my wife here, but pretty much she has all of her own stuff to take care of, and right now she still works a day job, so she's unable to help me as far as moving the cows and stuff, unless I just absolutely have to. Usually if I wait around for her, that usually means I end up making the cows wait longer than they need to wait. But anyway, so far that hasn't worked out too well either. So it's pretty much just me all by myself, and hopefully that will change someday, but it just hasn't changed yet. So for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly adapt, and I'm going to try to get myself to 1-day moves. But I'm going to start out, I told y'all earlier that I was fortunate. I have pastures that are fairly, you know, they've got cross fencing, so it's usually about a week's worth. I've got one pasture that was actually more than a week's worth, but I always do try to split that one out to make sure that they never stay in one spot for more than a week. I've always tried to do that. But anyway, so what we're going to do, I think, is we're going to just start off by splitting every single pasture in half. We got multiple pastures here, and we always make sure the recovery period, we always have a good, adequate recovery period. That's something we've never fallen short of. Okay, and what you're looking at right now is spring grass, and so this is just how spring ryegrass is. You don't get it. You know, you want to try to stay as behind as you can so that you can give the spring grass, the spring flush, as much of a growth as it can possibly get. But you do also run into the issue of, you know, hay is done. You know, you're done with hay, and you know, you move into that pasture. If you unroll a bale into this, they're not going to eat that bale. They're going to eat this. So you run into this problem, this little catch-22, where it's like, okay, I can either continue to feed hay in one spot, I can overgraze one spot, or I can move them out on a pasture like this, even though I don't really want to knock the grass down. For me, it's usually, I'm going to move them onto here, and I'm going to try to keep my cattle moving. This year's been worse than any other year for me, just because there's a lot of different scenarios, and I'll go into that in another video. But it's been very difficult. So we've actually downsized our herd to make up for it, to make up for the lack that we're having. So anyway, we'll talk about that in another video. But what I'm going to do to start out mob grazing is I'm going to break every single pasture in half, and I'm going to start like that. I'm going to go forward. And the reason I figure it's a good way to start is because in the springtime, I need to move quite a bit faster. So that means I'm having bigger areas. So I think just by splitting the pastures in half, that I'll be able to achieve that just fine all throughout the spring, and that'd be enough. That'd be about 2 months of fast growth. That's what I'm predicting based on the past, but that's not always the case. Anyway, about 2, maybe 3 months of fast growth, usually about 2, and then it starts to slow down. So what I'll try to do is I'll do the 1 wire for the 3 months, and then hopefully I can start to slow down and increase. I might get to where I'm doing 2 wires per pasture, and then just slowly increase from there, more and more. By the time I get to 2 wires, then I'll start just trying to knock it down to making sure the paddock is big enough for said amount of days, however many days that I'm trying to shoot for at that time. And then that way I'm slowly figuring out, I'm not getting overwhelmed, I'm slowly figuring out my system and trying to figure out how to make it work, and how one guy by himself can eventually get to where he's moving multiple cows across, you know, multiple different places and things like that. And one thing that's made my scenario just a little bit tough too is, and I know that Greg Judy would disagree with me on this, but I actually have 2 different pieces of property that are far enough apart that I'm forced to use 2 different herds. I've got a lot of times I try to just keep my bulls there, but I can't always do that. It's about 20 acres there, so it just ends up being too much land for them. So I'll put them there during the 3 months like that. But then typically I'm keeping, like right now, I'm keeping steers and heifers over there. And I don't like it. I would much prefer, and I completely agree with the idea that, you know, you want to try to have 1 herd. I agree with that 100%. It has not worked for us yet. So far we have no way of running the whole herd all the way down to that place. It's just a little bit too far away to do that. It's a blacktop road and there is too much traffic on it right now. Our scenario just happens to be different as far as that goes. With that being said, I have not given up. I am still trying to find a way to make it work, and eventually we may just load them all up and move them there. But, you know, as Greg Judy will say, you don't want to start off just buying a bunch of equipment. Well, so all I've got right now is a small trailer that works great for my operation, but it would not work great for moving cows, my whole herd, from one place to another. So before that can work, I think I'm going to have a much larger cattle trailer. So for me, that's like I said, for me, it's been difficult to make the one-day moves work because I'm trying to run sheep, pigs, and then 2 different herds of cows. You know, so it's not a perfect system, and it's just me all by myself. So it's not a perfect system, but we do hope to get it all the way down to one-day moves, at least for our mamas and the main herd. That's what we're going to try to shoot for. So like I said, I'm not knocking anybody. I'm not saying that somebody else can't do this. I do believe that it's possible for all of us to get to that point if that's something we're shooting for. And I do believe that one-day moves will make a massive difference. I saw that just for myself, like I said earlier, when I did the 3-day, you know, moving every 3 days. And I've just heard so many different people say the key is moving every single day. And I believe that that is the key, because every single place that you have has the maximum recovery period. If you're doing 1 week moves like I have done, then that means that that pasture that they're in has got to wait. It's basically got an entire extra week that it's going to have of recovery. Whereas if you're doing 1 day moves, you only got 1 day lacking in that spot. That spot is going to have, like let's say it takes 60 days to recover. well, that spot's going to take you only 61 days, including that one day that they're eating. It's only going to be 61 days, you know, or 60 days or 59 days. You know, it's not a perfect math. But the point is you're only having them on there for one day, and it's getting maximum recovery by doing that. So anyway, guys, I don't want to drag this video out for too long. I just kind of wanted to touch on that. That, like I said, there's been big reasons why we haven't switched over to that. We've just been trying to do way too much, not to mention the fact that we're actually building, we've been building a kind of our own new homestead here, and still don't have our house built. That's a story for another day as well. But we've pretty much gotten to where we're no longer the stress of building the place and the stress of trying to increase the volume of our business, because we've been trying to do that quite a bit as well. That has kind of toned down just a little bit for now, so it's still a lot of work, but it's just kind of toned down just enough to where I think I can start taking on more and more. And so that's kind of my plan. We're going to try to make it work. I'm hoping to put out a couple videos on that. We also got the sawmill. Y'all keep a lookout for those sawmill videos as well. But anyway, so we're going to put that out there, guys. Y'all let me know on your thoughts on y'all's past experiences for getting into mob grazing, and kind of how you did it. Did you jump into it full force, or were you able to get into it a little bit at a time? And if you did, then kind of how did you make that work? What was your plan and your approach? And then secondly, are you working completely by yourself? Do you have your spouse to be there helping you? Do you have children to help you? Just kind of put in the comments. I'd love to see what everyone else's scenarios is, what's going on for them. Or if they even think mob grazing will work for their system. So anyway, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe as always. I really appreciate all the support. It really does help my channel a lot. I need those likes, and I need those. I need that subscription base. I'm trying my best to grow my channel, putting out all this free content. And I would really, really help it if y'all could pay me back by just liking and subscribing. That's all I'm asking. It really doesn't cost you anything. Doesn't hurt anything at all. I know for me, I used to be scared to hit the subscribe button. I don't know why, I just was. But it's not a big deal. There's no boogeyman that's going to come get you. Anyway, I would really, truly appreciate it. Hit the like and the subscribe. Thank you so much.